Welcome to Tesla Info, and today we're going to take a look at indicating, specifically ahead of the Model 3 Highland that's coming out, and the lack of indicator stalk where you now have to use buttons on the steering wheel. So we thought we'd take a drive in our car and have a look at where our steering wheel position was when we typically indicate, and this is on UK roads, which obviously different countries have different types of traffic, so it may vary, but just to make us think really in terms of what it means. The first example is quite a large motorway junction, so it's a roundabout on top of that, and the arc of the road is actually not so great that the steering wheel never really moves massively from effectively straight ahead, and so our hands are reasonably well placed to reach the buttons at all times on the steering wheel. As we approach the slip onto the motorway, the steering wheel is pointing straight ahead, so again our hands are in the right position really next to the controls to make it fairly easy to find the button to basically indicate to get on, and to cancel the indicator if it doesn't cancel. And I know Tesla have got new software that tries to auto cancel, but a lot of cars would require manual cancellation or a 3-click action. What we did find though, as we were sort of changing lanes, is the fact that we were often not looking ahead when we were using the indicators. So we would be shoulder checking, making sure nothing's in the lane next to us, and we would indicate when we're sure the road is clear. And therefore, muscle memory needs to kick in there, where the top button is to turn right and the bottom button is to turn left, and you need to be pretty confident that you're hitting the right button, simply because the up and down action of the old indicator stalk was pretty reliable, whereas now you're basically trying to find a button on the steering wheel. Okay, so we now got a slip off the motorway. Again, the same as a slip on, it was fairly easy to find the control. The next roundabout we're going to do is also a major road. You can see there are 3 lanes of traffic entering it, although it's tighter than the last one. And we'll see that as we go around and past the last exit before the one we want, the controls are actually at the 12 o'clock position virtually, certainly 11 o'clock at the point where we need to indicate to tell traffic we're now turning off. We're now going to go through quite a complex series of roundabouts. They're all linked together, with short stretches of road joining them. And again, you have to make sure you indicate at the right point. You can't indicate early because you'll be giving false impression or false indication to other cars. And as we see as we go through the next couple, the steering wheel goes from almost lock to lock fairly quickly. And you need to keep track of where that steering wheel is, so that when you hit the indicators, you know where it is. Again, the indicators now are at 12 o'clock, at a point where we might want to indicate. We're indicating right now as we enter this roundabout. And as the traffic starts to move away, we'll see that the indicator position when it's on the steering wheel is up around the 11-12 o'clock position, at a point where we need to use it. Now, you could hold the steering wheel and let your arms almost cross over. That's not the way I was taught to drive. I'm not sure it's a sensible way either. Now, just on this stretch of road, we're just sort of simulating with our hand how you control the 2 indicators. So the indicators, it's almost just a flick with your fingers. Your thumb is still locked over the hoop or the top of the spoke, whereas if you're using the buttons, you almost have to slide your hand down to a 7 or 8 o'clock position so your thumb can rest over the buttons, and that means your thumb isn't really engaged in the steering wheel in the same way, certainly not the left hand. Having said that, when you're turning quite a lot, your hands can slide around the steering wheel to try and maintain a 9 and 3 o'clock position. We've just got a few more examples straight ahead. It's not a problem really on these big junctions, and we're going to move on to some city driving and some just normal side junctions in a second, just to see where we think the issues really start. So again, going around a big wide arced road or slow curve, steering wheel never really gets to beyond the top of the steering wheel past about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, so it's not really an issue. You're coming up to a simple left-hand turn now. Again, you indicate when the steering wheel's ahead, so no big deal. Okay, the next example is more of an urban area, and this is where the fun really starts. So we've got quite a hard right-hand turn here. So the steering wheel, the controls have now reached 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. They're on completely the opposite side of the steering wheel when we needed to indicate. So you'd almost be having to indicate with your right hand, not your left hand. A smaller roundabout, not really a big deal. I mean, the steering wheel, the controls have still reached 10, 11 o'clock on the steering wheel. You could get away with that with straight on. We're now coming up to a junction where you turn left and then almost immediately right. So this is where the steering wheel has now gone full lock to the left, and you need to indicate to the right while it's still there. Again, the indicator position is nowhere near where you expect it to be at the point of indicating. You can't indicate early because you're obviously turning left. And we just worry that people will just stop indicating because it's easier that than trying to actually work out where the indicator control is. So we have another small, fairly tight roundabout where the steering wheel has gone way past 90 degrees. The actual indicator controls are at 2 o'clock. Again, that's right hand indicating, which is not something people would expect to do. Another example, and the indicators again are at the 1, maybe even 2 o'clock position, and it's just not feasible to keep your hands on the steering wheel and turn that amount of revolution and still maintain control. We're going to come up to a T junction, and again, even though you put some lock on, you can indicate ahead. So some people might indicate when the steering wheel controls, the indicators are at 6 or 7 o'clock, but actually you can indicate a little bit earlier. That's just a slight change. Traffic lights again, right hand turn, you can indicate ahead of time. That's no big deal. We're going to come up to another roundabout. And this is probably the limit of without taking your hands off the steering wheel. The steering wheel is going to get up to, the controls are going to get to about 11 o'clock. Now we sort of move the steering wheel in our hands there. You could, if you wanted to, hold on. But bear in mind, again, you're sort of like holding the steering wheel in a slightly unusual position and pressing a button. And we're not convinced you've got the same degree of control when the steering wheel that's far around and you're repositioning your hand. A simple left-hand turn, again, you can indicate fine. So really, I mean, to summarise, in a lot of situations it's not a problem. You just have to adjust how you hold the wheel to be able to use indicators. The two main issues we see is, one is you're not always looking ahead when you indicate, particularly lane changes and stuff like that. You could be looking over your shoulder, and so therefore having confidence in which is the left and the right button is paramount. And then there are an awful lot of complex junctions and roundabouts, certainly the smaller roundabouts, where the steering wheel will be in a position where effectively you're having to indicate with your right hand as opposed to your left hand and find the buttons, and we think that's a real problem.